Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Giving up your evenings with your family, your friends, your loved ones. So thank you so much for coming again. We are really delighted to have you here. This is a very special day for all of us, especially for me, because the United Nations has been a great force for me over the past 10 years or so. I'm part of the UN Task Force Against Human Trafficking. We are part of an international organization, and one of the tasks that we have started in combating human trafficking is actually working across the network, across hospitals, across clinics, across the country and across the world in terms of identifying victims of human trafficking. And that's very huge for me. Right here in Northwest Indiana, we have identified at least 15 to 16 victims in August alone of last year. So it is very, very prevalent. It is very much prevalent in this area within Northwest Indiana. And I'm very grateful that today, elected officials, survivors, and community members have gotten together to commemorate our survivors. Thank you so much.
So on behalf of the board, once again, we want to thank you very much for taking time out of your professional day, away from your families. We know you could be many other places, but you chose to be here with us. So we promise we're not going to elongate this any more than it has to be. And we hope that it's actually going to be beneficial with creating relationships and also networking and building those synergistic kind of bridges so we can come up with kind of a solution to what's really happening here in Northwest Indiana. We have, if you guys can tell from the program, we have quite a few people who are community leaders and politicians and things of that such that will have time to be able to discuss how they and their platform can help not only stem the gap of what we have for resources in Northwest Indiana, but also how they can help us build a relationship with Safe CHR. So what I do ask for all those that are going to be speaking is if we can keep it to 5 minutes or less. And I know this is a topic that we can just elaborate on, but it will help us get through this in a very orderly fashion, and we'll be able to take away something from each one of our presentations. The one thing I would like to remind everybody is if you haven't had a chance to register and you just happened to walk in and went past the desk, if you could please go back up there and register, give us your name, get your name tag. It just helps us to keep accountability for who showed up today, okay? So please, we would appreciate that. I'll give you an overview. So this is how, if you're going to have a presentation up here, if you could keep it this way, it would be great. So I'll use myself as an example. So hello, my name is Mark Price. I am the treasurer and board member of Safe CHR. I am a financial advisor with Edward Jones. I used to be a former Wall Street trader, and I was the chief deputy of the Lake Superior Juvenile Courts. How I came to know, and so your introduction. The second part we'd like to know is, how did you get to be involved with Safe CHR? I personally came on board around mid to late 2018. I was introduced by a friend, and I'm on several different boards with other organizations, but I've never had this level of opportunity to connect with the youth and the demise of what's going on with human trafficking to this extent. I knew it kind of existed, but I never knew to what extent it did. And Dr. Gopal and Dr. Sandra, when they started Safe CHR, opened my eyes to a world that I never knew existed. And then the third that we'd ask, the introduction, how you came to know Safe CHR, as well as how do you bridge your platform, what you do for a living, your position as an elected official or community leader, how do you bridge that with what we do? So with me, with my professional skills, having the Wall Street background, I am the treasurer. So I promise that your dedicated funds that go to this organization will be transparent. I am a fiduciary, so I make sure that it's used and spent in a way that it's as if it was my grandmother's money. So we are very cognizant of how every dime is spent, and it is always accountable for anybody to ever ask. So that's less than 5 minutes. That's me. Register, the overview. So I would like to read, so Mayor Prince from Gary was not able to be here. He had to be out at a certain time and we couldn't guarantee that he would, but he did send this message. Mayor Prince recognizes the need to partner with Save CHR to combat human trafficking here in Northwest Indiana. Right now, due to a scheduling conflict this evening, he ran behind and will not be able to make it, but rest assured that Mayor Prince is working very hard to bring Gary back to being the destination city that it once was, and is honored and proud to work with Save CHR for its future endeavors. So that's for Mayor Prince. That having been said, we have 18 speakers, and the next one that I'd like to introduce is Miss Jane Moran. Sorry, you're gonna have to hold it. There you go.
Hello and good evening, everyone. This thing is sensitive. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We are grateful. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to follow Mark's rules, but I'm also going to come from a survivor's perspective as well. So I am Jane Mervan. My husband is Congressman Frank Mervan. We have two daughters, a 14 and an 18-year-old. And so I started becoming a board member, through Dr. Gopal, and I'm probably the newest board member currently. And really, I've always wanted to do important work like this. I work full-time out of the house. My husband's gone, 75% of the time. We have two young children. And the time commitment has always been very challenging for me to go outside of my work and do something meaningful like this. So I am just super grateful for this opportunity, but why would I want to do something like this when I have very little time? And the answer is really simple, and it's because I am a survivor. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. I am not, I have not been trafficked, but I am, it was from someone in my own home. It was very personal, so this is very personal to me. And my sister Kelly was also a survivor, and about a decade ago she had passed. She had turned to opioids and other things to numb the pain. This is a lifelong process, and it's very difficult as a survivor, and she didn't have the services that she needed. And so really what I want to say is with Dr. Gopal and the SAFE chair, along with the subsidiary, which is Ashley's House, which provides wraparound services and evidence-based outcomes that really help these survivors to overcome the difficulties of sexual abuse and to be able to function in society and to be able to contribute and to be able to raise their families and to be able to do the things that they want to do and function at a high level. So that is why I am a board member for Safe Chair, because I'm going to do the important work that needs to be done. And right now, tonight is a great example of it. So to everyone who's here tonight, thank you for being here to learn, to contribute, to share, and to make this known, because Northwest Indiana is a problem with sex trafficking, and it's in our backyards, it's in foster cares, it's all over Northwest Indiana. So, so how can we all play a role in contributing to something that is so important as sexual abuse and sex trafficking? And really, I guess, for me, I think that, we could be board members and we could do lots of things, but it's really being a steward to your neighbor, your friends, your family. I think a lot of times there are children, we get that feeling, that gut feeling, and there's a child out there that's suffering. And so we need to be stewards and actually stand up for these children. If you see something, if you suspect something, speak. You must make that telephone call and turn it in. There's a child out there who is suffering, who is counting on you as a neighbor, as a friend, as a family member, to protect them and care for them and get them the appropriate help that they need. My husband started the No More Secrets campaign along with Myra Rodriguez-Alvarez and Isha Haley. And this was a program that went into the schools and taught children and teachers and families about sexual abuse and how to identify a child who is undergoing sexual abuse. So with that being said, right now I think in our nation and in the entire world, we are really being forced to open our eyes because of an American Olympic gymnast who had taken herself off of the map. And so now we're all, why is this young girl who is so talented and such an asset to this Olympic team, why is she stepping off the map? And now we're being forced to look at sexual abuse as an entire world, whether we want to or not, because it's something we're all talking about. And so with regard to taking care of each other and being part of something bigger than yourself and looking out for people who are vulnerable, all I can ask of everyone here today is that is the small part that you can do, is to look out for the vulnerable, for the youth in our nation. And I am going to, in closing, I'm going to leave you with a quote, and it's from Mother Teresa. And it says, "The problem with our world is that we draw the circle of family too small." And that's really, really important, because I think that once we start bringing everyone in, regardless of, you know, their gender, their nationality, their religion, their color, then we become a whole, and we can support each other and help each other out. And I just want to thank Dr. Gopal, because she's doing very, very important work. And to be on this board is very important, because the work is pure and the mission is simple, and it's to protect our youth. So thank you so much once again for everyone being here. We are grateful. And on to our next speaker.
Thank you, Jamie. All right, if we could have Senator Eddie Melton come to the stage, please. We'll be able to hear a little bit from him as well.
Good evening. My name is Eddie Melton. I'm State Senator for District 3, which includes Gary, Maryville, Hobart, Crown Point, Lake Station, and New Chicago. And it's definitely a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. I want to send a special thank you to Dr. Williams. I haven't seen her tonight, but for her personal invitation, and Jane, thank you for sharing your story. I know there are a lot of stories that's to be shared tonight. I also want to thank every individual that's here. I just want to share their perspective on what we can do collectively to help address human trafficking. Human trafficking is a widespread and ongoing problem, and spreading an awareness is critical in the effort to address and reduce this practice. Now, from 2018 to 2019, there was a 19% increase in human trafficking in our state. And that number has risen over the course of this pandemic. Unfortunately, because Indiana does not have a centralized reporting mechanism, we cannot gain a true scope of how human trafficking is a problem in our state, and that's a problem that we must fix. We do know that service providers indicate that human trafficking problem in our state is greater than what is being reported. We also know that Northwest Indiana is pretty much a transit point used for human traffickers. We've heard many stories at the State House of individuals come to testify and share their experiences. I believe that places additionally responsible, such as our communities, we have to expand our efforts to combat human trafficking in this area. That's why I'm pleased to be here and support Safe CHR has recently inaugurated the Ashley's House as one of the first safe homes in Northwest Indiana for traumatized women and children. So I commend you all and those that's responsible for that effort. Ashley's House is an evidence-based, comprehensive, and holistic program addressing the whole person's complex childhood traumas and adult life experiences. And that's something that we don't talk about enough. We've all experienced some form or shape of trauma. This program is expected to fill in an important void in delivering social service in critical area. And I'm happy to support the inauguration of this safe house in our community. Now, before I was elected, just like it was mentioned before, I didn't know much about human trafficking or the statistics, or I haven't heard many stories. Since taking office, I've become more educated on this issue, and I've listened to the traumatic stories that victims have shared through their testimonies. That's why I'm wholly committed to doing my part to combat human trafficking in our community and our state. I just want to take a brief moment. I know I have a few colleagues here. I know Representative Earl Harris is going to be speaking soon. But we have a very close friend that's a state representative, and he's one of the leading advocates against human trafficking in the state of Indiana, and that's Representative John Bartlett. If you can stand real quick. He was the very first person that brought this to my awareness when I got into the Senate. So I want to thank him, and I thank him for traveling to Indianapolis to come here today. In the last several years, and as I close, I've supported multiple proposals. One important measure that we supported, and I'm sure John will remember this, in 2018, House Bill 1230 that took place. That legislation mandates that school personnel receive human trafficking training every other year so they can watch and recognize the signs of human trafficking. If we are to successfully combat this, it's going to take an all-hands-on-deck effort. That's why I'm pleased to see this legislation that passed in the year 2018. In the last 4 years of our state has made essential strides in identifying and providing services for human trafficking. So as I prepare to close, I just want to again thank you again to the State Coalition for Human Rights for their advocacy and vital work. And you can always look to myself and my colleagues as an ally, as someone that's going to help be a voice and fight for you at the State House in Indianapolis. So thank you so much for having me.
Our next speaker would be Chief Rosario. Is he here today? I don't know if he was able to make it. Okay. Well, we'll move on. If he does make it, just know we'll add him in at the end. The next speaker then we'll have is Representative Earl Harris. If you can make your way up, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. As said, my name is Earl Harris Jr. I am a state representative for House District 2, and it is indeed an honor to be with you today. This is one of those topics that when a lot of people think about Indiana, they don't think human trafficking, but the reality is it happens in all 50 of our states. People think about states like Nevada, California, Florida, and while they are in the top 10, it's here in Indiana as well, as we've already heard so far. When you look at numbers, Nevada, which has the highest amount, 7.5 per 100K are involved. In Indiana, it's 2.3 per 100K, which is near the average of 2.83 for the entire country. The other unfortunate part when you talk about Indiana is our numbers are unfortunately rising. 157 cases were reported in 2019. That is a 19% increase from 2018. And so, and 40 of those in 2019 involved minors. And I want to let that sink in. We're talking about 40 that involved minors. The other thing I want you to think about is, I use the word reported because we don't know ones that weren't reported. So no matter what we know and think the numbers are, they're probably a little different than we think they are. I want to echo something that Senator Melton said, and again, give credit to Representative John Bartlett. Senator Melton and I both came in the legislature at the same time, and John is someone that we look up to and look to for guidance. And as Senator Melton said, this is a topic that he has talked about and fought for years. He was also provided me with a lot of knowledge, a lot of information that I didn't already know. And so, John, I want to also thank you, Representative Bartlett, for the wonderful knowledge and the continued exposure of this issue in working on this. In 2019, in the United States, 11,500 human trafficking cases were reported. And I wanted to share something. When you talk about human trafficking, it's not always sex, sometimes it's labor. So you also have people that are forced into labor and not just about the sexual part. We are talking about, and this is something that John talks about, this is a multi-billion-dollar criminal industry. So no matter what you think about it, this is about money. This is about human beings using other human beings to make money. We want to make sure that we talk about this, expose it, and let people know the predators come from all different genders, race, economics, etc. I want to share something with you. I actually saw a video recently, and this is one of those where pay attention and keep an eye on what's going on. And in the video, it showed little kids being dragged by an adult. And as a little kid walked by an adult walking in the opposite direction, they would hit them. They would knock something out of their hand. And when the person bent over to pick it up and looked back at the kid, and I'm gonna walk out here, the little child would do this. Has anyone seen that before? I saw a hand raise up. That is a sign of a child that is in distress. So when you're walking around, don't think it's just a bad kid being bad. It's a kid that needs help, and they're counting on you to make a difference. So in closing, I want to talk about something. I want to give John credit one more time. Again, there are a lot of adults that are involved in this, but there are also a lot of children. And as Representative Bartlett has said many a time, we have to protect our babies. So please stay vigilant, stay involved, stay out there, talk about this, make people aware. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Well, we've heard his name a couple of times already, so Representative Bartlett, would you come up and give us a few words, please?
Good evening. It is truly an honor to be here for such huge problem in our country and in our world. My name is John Bartlett. I represent House District 95, the northeast side of Indianapolis. I was in Muncie earlier, but when Senator Melton told me that this was going on here, it was imperative that I be here. I want to partner with anyone who's working to destroy human trafficking. And I'm going to charge you with something. I want you, when a legislator comes to you and asks you for your vote, ask them this question: what have you done for human trafficking? What have you done to protect babies? If you want my vote and you've done nothing, see ya. We owe this to our babies. We owe this to them. And there's actually 4 parts to human trafficking. There's a sex trade, a slave labor trade, there's a human organ trade, and along the East Coast, they're kidnapping young girls, breeding them, and selling the babies. If you Google, just Google, how much are human body parts on the black market, you would be very surprised. We have a lot of work to do. We need an Ashley's House all across the great state of Indiana, not just in Northwest Indiana. This problem is, yes. And our legislature should fund it. Our legislature should fund it. It's your tax dollars. Why shouldn't we protect our babies? And I don't want to say past my time, but each one of us have a state senator and a state representative. Contact them and let them know want to support work against human trafficking. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. We're going to change gears a little bit here. We're going to have a survivor's voice from Corey T. If we can have Corey up to give us a...
See if I can figure this out. Well, hi everyone. Got the introduction, but again, my name is Corey Turgeson, and I'm speaking to you all today as a child trafficking survivor. So I want to kind of go back and talk about where I came from a little bit, my story, and then eventually bring you up to pace about where I am today. My childhood and my high school experience was typical in a lot of ways, and in some other ways it was atypical. So on the surface, things looked pretty good. I was a straight A student in high school, I had a part-time job, I had friends, and I was applying for scholarships to go to college. And then there was another side of my life that I masked really well and I internalized. emotional distress, something with family issues related to my parents getting divorced, financial issues at the time, and this was the 08-09 recession, so I don't think any of these are out of the realm of normal experiences that families go through. And there was no specific cause or reason for why I kind of fell into the trap of exploitation. It was the confluence of a lot of different things at the same time. And the reason I want to share this is because trafficking can happen to anyone. No one suspected. No one in my family suspected. The only one who knew it was happening was me. And I kept it that way on purpose for a long time due to internalized shame. And so, hello? Am I back? Okay. So that's the first point I want to make. This can happen to anyone. And to just be open-minded. There's no prototype of a survivor. There's no stereotype that anyone can experience what I experienced. So now I want to kind of fast forward. So I got out of that situation by getting a scholarship to go to college in California. And I did my bachelor's there. I afterwards shortly pursued my master's in public health because I knew I wanted to go into healthcare one day. And then after my master's, I'm like, I'm not quite done. So I ended up applying for and getting into a PhD program, which is where I'm at now. I'm at DePaul University, getting my PhD in clinical and community psychology. And a lot of what I do is so connected to my history. So I do research and I'm a clinician, and a lot of the research I do is health equity. And a lot of the clinical work I do prioritizes underserved communities. And I also do some advocacy on the side and policy writing pertaining to this exact issue of human trafficking, because that's what has inspired me to take this path in life. And as I look back, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I wouldn't be doing the things I'm doing today if it hadn't been for my lived experiences. And my journey here was difficult, but I was able to take an immensely painful, difficult experience and turn it into something positive, or at least make positive meaning out of it. And that's the second point I want to make, is that every person has a voice, and that voice can be used and uplifted. And my challenge to everyone here is to elevate those voices, because to be in a space and to give my opinions and share my experiences as a survivor, in addition to my more formal training, has been the most incredible journey I could have ever asked for. And so, yeah, take those two recommendations with you. And again, I just want to thank you all for being here, participating, and providing me with a space to share my story.
Thank you, Corey, for your candor, your openness. We really appreciate you sharing that with us. I do apologize because I don't know most of the presenters here today on a personal level, but our next presenter, I can honestly say I know when I was working in the criminal courts and in the juvenile courts. I've known him personally. He took time to sit with me, help me out through my professional development. He is a true professional and a great guy. Our own Lake County Prosecutor, Bernie Carter.
Good evening. Mark and I worked together for a number of years, and when I came in tonight and I saw the role that he's playing, you have a fantastic leader and a fantastic individual who is so dedicated in anything that he does, particularly when you work in the juvenile system, and this is so related to juvenile system and sex trafficking and child molestation and all that. He was just a great entity for the county. I'm pleased to be here. And I noticed that we have a beautiful crowd. In fact, I think I saw 3 tables set up because they couldn't accommodate the numbers. So I like to praise that and say that is a blessing. And the reason it is because it's all about knowledge. It's all about knowledge. And I think one of the fantastic things that we've heard from, I think 2 of our senators and 1 of our representatives for the state. And those individuals are so powerful. So powerful. You know why? Because in the criminal justice system, funding gets things done. If you do not have the funding, you're not going to get it done. They just recently passed a high-tech crime unit. They're gonna put 10 throughout the state. I made application for our county to have one. I know Gary German, who's gonna speak right after me, made application for one. That high-tech crime unit is applicable to this, by far it is. They're giving us $300,000 per year, and we're tied in with Purdue University, who Purdue University is giving us double that in terms of resources and like kinds. So we're looking at probably $1 million a year product that we're gonna be putting out effective January 1, and it's all about high tech, all about surveillance. It's all included in everything that we do, because every one of us have a cell phone in here probably tonight, and that cell phone is a computer. That cell phone is a camera. That cell phone is everything. My daughters would literally die without one. They really would. They're like, if I took it away from them, they would not talk to me forever until I returned it. So that's how it's important to our young people, but they are used by that and manipulated by that. There's a guy named Phil Benson with the United States Attorney's Office. He goes around and talks about child abuse and computers and how kids are drawn in. And that's what they do. They get up online and they say, meet me here or do this, and you're talking to a 42-year-old man. And they think they're talking to a 12-year-old boy. That's how they use kids. And that's what Senator Milton, that's what that bill and that funding is going to do. It's going to assist us in that. In addition to that, one of the things I'm concerned with, and I started a victim unit in my office. And I got dedicated people that we're training, these are attorneys. And that's all they do. It's child molesting cases, trafficking cases, talking about it, going around talking about the trafficking case. Let me be real quick, because I know I only got 3 or 4 minutes. You know, the key to this is funding and talking about it. Because believe me, if you go out and talk to your next door neighbor, as Senator Milton mentioned, they won't know about it. It's so private, it's so, you don't, I mean, even the victims don't want to come forward. And that's one of the things I want to say real quick, because I was asked to speak on that. My unit is really sensitive to victims and victims' testimony and getting charges filed. And one of the things is we try to put them in a position where they don't have to testify. We can't guarantee that they won't be needed to testify, but if we have a strong case, we're going to get a plea. And we're going to get out of that where they have to come forward and testify, because that's one of the hesitations in all sexual crimes, is that the victim saying, I don't want to get up there and testify, and the mother saying, I don't want my daughter getting up there being re-victimized. And many times we can say, we can kind of guarantee or kind of get a plea out of this here, but we may have to compromise. We may have to compromise on the length of time that that individual will have. So what I say is this: in order for us, legislators are so important in terms of funding. Organizations, our county councils, the town, city councils, they're very important in terms of funding. And then the last part is having advocates out. Jimenez, Nick Neal, and I went on this whole campaign for months in almost a lot of different churches. It was all concentrated on churches. But what Jimenez funded was for he and I to be the speakers and go into churches and talk about the reality of trafficking, sex trafficking, the reality of it, that it does exist. And they mentioned 11,000, you're probably looking at 20, 30 times that. Nobody can regulate that. Nobody can even estimate how much is involved. One of the things that I want to bring your attention, about a half a mile from here, right over there off of Mississippi Street, high active area, just blocks from us here where we're at here, high active areas. So we just need to know what's going on. We need to talk to our children, talk to communities, and get out the word. And as mentioned, in reference to what signs you look for, they're out there. Those signs are there. We need to know them and support our young people as well as individuals who are being victimized. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bernie. Next, our Porter County Prosecutor, Mr. Gary German.
My name is Gary German, and I am the Porter County Prosecutor. I'm a little older than most of you here, and I can tell you that I started my career as a prosecutor back in 1973. And I was elected the first time in 1978, and let me tell you, what we are facing now is so much different than what it was in 1978. I also always say when I speak to different groups, I love my job. I love everything about it, and I love my staff. And that's how important I think it is for what we do in Porter County. Now, in Valparaiso, I can assure you that the people in Porter County have no idea what's going on. If you ask them about human or sex trafficking, they would say, oh, that's in Lake County, that's in Indianapolis, that's in Chicago. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. It happens in Portage, it happens in Valparaiso, it happens in everywhere. As Bernie said, I have also applied for a high-tech or a cyber crimes unit for Porter County, and it's intended to serve not just us, but some of the southern counties as well. I got the idea about 2 years ago when I attended my first prosecutors conference, because I had just taken office again in 2019. So I heard a South Bend cyber crimes unit talk, and I kind of thought, oh my gosh, why we should have one. So I've been working on this for 2 years. And we have everything in place, except that we did not have the funding. And thank God, the Indiana legislature has set aside money for our cyber crimes unit. Because as Bernie said, it does take money, and lots of it, if we're going to join this fight. So we tend to focus on our cell phones and our devices, and the cases in which we're typically involved are the drug cases, when we're following cell phones to drug dealers and connecting the dots. But I met with a couple of members of Homeland Security when I first took office. And what I learned is that there are 2 Homeland Security officers basically working this area in Chicago and investigating internet crimes against children, human and sex trafficking. 2 agents. They have not nearly enough people and money and resources to do what needs to be done. So when I thought about a high-tech crimes unit, I wanted to incorporate the internet crimes against children, human and sex trafficking. I serve on the Northwest Indiana Human Trafficking Task Force. There's a girl in Indianapolis who is in charge of that, and we are just now starting to educate our police officers to begin to recognize signs, symptoms, and those who may be involved. It will be a challenging and difficult task, right, Bernie? But I think that we can do it. As I close, I'm a lawyer, of course. Can I see myself as a lawyer? And my job is to help people. Different levels for different reasons, but my job is to help people. And I can't think of people to help more than those who have been taken advantage of, abused, and used for profit. Another human being. And it's bothersome to me that there's actually a market for it, but there is. There's a great line at the end of the movie, A Few Good Men, when the 2 Marines who have been convicted, and they're talking to one another, and the one can't figure out, well, what did I do wrong? And the one Marine looks at the other one and says, that's because our job is to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. That's what I do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. Once again, we're going to have a survivor voice, so if Nancy can come up.
My name is Nancy. I want to talk about how kids is easy to get in trafficking. I didn't personally experience, but I had a best friend that had got into it, and reason why I say my best friend is because we was teenagers during that time, and we was being teenager thing, partying, and she wanted to stay along with the guy, and I had intuition to say, no, I'm gonna go home. And the next day, I guess, she was gone. I didn't see her until I was like 22, 23, I saw her, and she was just trying to get me to go to this place, and I'm like, no, I'm good. But she was trafficking, but it's easy to get kids and girls because one, runaways are easier, homeless girls are easy, and they use vulnerable females like ourselves who low self-esteem or anything. And it's scary because I'm a mother of 4 with all girls, and people think trafficking is not real, but it really is. Sex and trafficking is a little more worse than organ and labor because they start off with little babies and they train them to grow up to be whatever, prostitute, whatever. It's basically money, it's like a pimp. It's money. And trafficking is like a hidden crime. Nobody want to talk about it. You push it to the side, and it's happening right with our kids around our eyes. So just watch your kids, girls and boys. So, like I said, I'm a mother of 4, so I love my kids dearly, and I teach them the right and wrong things to try to help them so that when they get out in the real world, that it can happen to anybody. It could be your own family member, strangers, somebody on the street say you want candy, anything. And internet is the most popular thing that they go after kids. So, trafficking, yeah. I'm a survivor, and it is real. So, that's it.
Thank you, Nancy. If we could please have Representative Cotton up here.
Hello. And again, I would to speak, and what I've heard so far already obsolesces a lot of what I might add to the agenda. However, let me say that I am Robert Cotton, and I'm semi-retired financial services representative who is serving currently my second year of my second term as an elected official in Valparaiso. That's not a state rep, that is actually a local elected official in the city of Valparaiso. That dovetails into what I might say about how I might be an effective advocate along with SafeCHR. But I would like to also say that Ray's made a couple of notes, and as I said, hey, this microphone is really tricky. I'm very gracious. I got a lot of gratitude for being asked to speak here. I couldn't quite figure out why, but I do look at a lot of what I know in my own personal life, recognizing that human trafficking is something that I saw all the time as a young boy. Not human trafficking, but the aspect of people with high esteem in the inner city, in the impoverished areas of the inner city, taking advantage of people with low esteem. Generally speaking, that is the trade of, what you call it, the pimps or the opportunistic people who, for financial reasons, exploited young girls and women. So I said, well, gosh, I mean, I am familiar with that, and I'm also familiar with the nature of how important it is to recognize the multifaceted aspects of this scourge. It is a scourge that's been around perhaps as long as mankind, and it's probably something that's not going to go away anytime soon, regardless of what we do. However, what we do, and I applaud the effort of SafeCHR, if I may say the phonetic pronunciation of SAFECHR, for the intensive way that they tend to interact with their clients, for lack of a better word. But, among the many factors that come into play, self-esteem does build confidence. And I know firsthand how, in fact, your confidence can be eroded in many different ways, particularly as I get to my own journey. My journey is one of having been the second child of the first family that integrated what was formerly the Sun downtown in Valparaiso. If you've been around for long enough, I guess you may be familiar with how rigid the racial divide was for Porter County and particularly Valparaiso historically. So having a historically significant, as I like to call it, relationship with Valparaiso, where in fact I got to see how little my voice actually mattered, how being somewhat voiceless, because of who you are, it kind of drove my message, my service as an elected official is to promote, or at least let's say not promote, but rather to stand for what I call every voice counts. Every voice has to count in order for our democracy as it is formed and envisioned to work effectively for everybody's representation. And so that's become more than a slogan to me. People in my city know whether you are Republican or Democrat, whether you are rich or poor, whether you are inside or outside of my district, if there's something that needs to rise to the level of attention that comes to your elected officials, people that you elected, they call me. They call me because they know that their voices will be elevated and given respectful consideration in the public square. So to the extent that I am not like my dear friend Eddie Melton and or Mr. Earl Harris, or the gentleman from Indianapolis, I can't make law. In fact, I'm often encumbered by the laws that you guys make. I can be a person who understands the value of having strategic advocacy and people who are willing to be thrilling when it comes to a worthy fight. And there's none more worthy than this issue of human trafficking. There are several things that I could have said or that I written down, but like I said, coming up here, I said, wow, a lot of what I have to say is really rather obsolete by all the knowledge that's been imparted upon us. So I'll suffice to say that, I do value the work. I applaud the people who particularly, like Jane Revan, who doesn't run away from the strength that actually she has been able to accrue in overcoming her circumstances and openly deal with it and promote the well-being of others, and those others who have also spoken. I think that's hugely courageous and something that we should all leverage, imbue ourselves with their might and their will, and be good agents, good friends of CHR. So I don't have anything more to say. If I haven't taken 5 minutes, so I'll cede it to the next speaker. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So we will switch now to our survivor voice. If I can remind just the speakers, if you can introduce yourself, give us a background on how you know Save CHR, and then kind of give us a bridge of how you can bring your position to Save CHR. We really appreciate it. So our next our survivor voice will be Michelle. So if Michelle can come up, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michelle, and I am the president right now at Ashley's house. Yay, woo-woo. Okay, so try to make this brief, okay? So I haven't been human trafficked, okay? But I battled home insecurity. And any type of life challenge you face can put you into a vulnerable position where you could be human trafficked. And I believe Ashley's house intercepted that for me, okay? But I'm gonna tell y'all what really goes on at Ashley's house, okay? Because I live there. So, when I found out about Dr. Gopal, I didn't even know about CHR, I knew about Ashley's house, but I found out through a group of little nuns that were involved with, what's her name? The sister in Calcutta, Mother Teresa, okay? They are part of the sect of nuns with Mother Teresa, missionaries of charity. And I was even privileged to meet the lady that took her place, Mother Teresa's place. So anyway, in the middle of the pandemic, I was staying in a hotel. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't have a place to go. And so I called the sisters and I was like, hey, can I come stay with you guys? Because I'm running out of money. And next thing I knew, behind the scenes, the sisters called Dr. Gopal. And I was at work. I was working, trying to do everything I know to do, but I didn't even know where I was gonna be laying my head. And so next thing I knew, I found out that I had a place to go. And I'm like, okay. So when I got to Ashley's house, oh my God. Is it on? Oh my God. It was like rules, rules, rules. I'm like, am I at Ashley's house or is this Nightmare on Elm Street? I'm like, what is this place? I had to put on my phone location. I had to do, oh my goodness. But you know what, to make a long story short, because of Ashley's house, I cleaned up my credit. Woo! I cleaned up my credit. You know what? I would not even want to look at my credit score unless I had a couple of drinks. That's how bad it was. But because of Ashley's house, I've learned I'm on a journey of rediscovery. And I'm not gonna tell you all my story, but I'm just on a journey of rediscovery. Dr. Gopal, Don, Pastor, they are amazing. And they make me challenge myself. And I argue with them all the time, y'all. So it ain't always, roses. I argue with them, I fight. It's like we're a family there. And I appreciate them. And if it wasn't because of them, I probably would be here, not as a person who was intercepted from human trafficking, but being a victim of human trafficking, okay? So I love you guys, thank you. You ain't gonna get rid of me. So I'm probably gonna be the house mom eventually when they put me out. So, all right guys, that's it.
All right. So if we can get Dr. Lang up here, please. Dr. Lang. Dr. Lang is round up.
Hello, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for coming. This is really such an important topic. And Dr. Gopal, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. I met Dr. Gopal because they were gracious enough through this pandemic. My husband and I had a private practice where we were going into people's homes, nursing homes, substance abuse residential facilities, and different things like that, helping people who could not get out. And when the pandemic hit, we lived in Chicago. Lori Lightfoot closed everything down. And so I'm like, what do we do now? Graciously, I was able to apply with them and started working with Mid-America. Through Mid-America, I heard Dr. Gopal talking about CHR. I heard her talking about Ashley's house. And the more I heard about it, the more I started listening and thinking, I want to be a part of that. The reason it touched me is because I have a cousin who was sex trafficked. She came from an average house. I heard somebody else talking about an average household. Her father was a pastor, and she was 17, feeling herself, went online to the Christian dating site, thinking that this is a good guy. He's from the Christian dating site. Met him for coffee, met him for dinner, introduced him to her family. He groomed her. And everybody thought this guy was great. Until one day, she left with him to go for dinner and didn't come home. We did not find her for over 3.5 years. He had taken her all the way to Alaska with a bunch of other girls to service the men there. Because in Alaska, there's not very many women who want to live in Alaska, but there's a lot of men there. So her and a group of other girls who had also been groomed through this same Christian dating site found themselves in Alaska. They were drugged and woke up in Alaska. Just didn't know where they were, had no way to reach their family. We hired detectives. We tried to find her and search for her, and her and a group of other girls were able to escape. Find a phone, and she reached out to her father and said, "Daddy, I'm in Alaska, come and get me." And they were able to get her and some other girls out of there. So it was great for her to finally come home. Everybody thought, probably she was killed, or, this guy disappeared, nobody could find him either. Of course, he didn't exist. As a lot of times I tell the kids that I see as a therapist in our safe schools, I tell them it's so unsafe online. You don't know who you're talking about, and they touched on this earlier. You could be talking to a 50-year-old man who's looking for a young girl. You could be talking to anyone, whether you're a girl or you're a boy. You're not safe online. You never know who's on the other side of that chat. So I always talk to them about, and we've been talking to them in safe schools about how important it is to be safe online, how to make sure that you're always careful about who you're meeting and who you're talking to. I appreciate the survivors who talked about their stories. That's so important. It really is. I appreciate that you were courageous to do that, because a lot of times they don't want to share that story. It's really hard to tell because it brings a lot of trauma. And Dr. Kupal and I and other therapists where we are able to talk to people who are dealing with those sort of things. How we bridge it. My husband and I have Reese Total Health and Wellness. We also help people build their lives back again. We help them from whatever trauma experiences that they've had. We make sure that we can help them in any kind of way, their spiritual life, their total health, mind, body, spirit, wellness. And we do that through the people that we meet. We work in underserved communities on the south side of Chicago. And wherever we find people, whoever needs us, we're there. And we're able to do that because we have so many connections now through CHR. Okay.
Another survivor and a mentor with Ashley's House. We'll have Dawn Nowak.
Okay, good evening. My name is Dawn Nowak, and I am currently the director of Ashley's House through Safe Coalition for Human Rights. I come from a family of 4 generations of women firstborn in my family that suffered emotional, physical, and mental abuse. I have helped many families. Some of you in the room actually helped me break the cycle for my family. Dr. Paul was instrumental in that years ago. So was the prosecutor's office, some of the counseling agencies in this room. Someone would have told me 20 years ago that I could break the cycle for the generations in my family that thought abuse was normal. I just thought it was normal. I thought it was every day, day to day. But then I started giving birth to one daughter after another. given birth to 6 children and took guardianship of one boy, all the rest girls. So for me, it was important. I didn't want my daughters to suffer and go through what I had went through. My 2 oldest daughters witnessed a lot, went through a lot, dated a lot of the same that I did. And then about 15 years ago, I got into the field of counseling. I have worked with federal probation, individuals that came to me and told me that human trafficked humans, having been a survivor of domestic violence and an advocate for those survivors, that was a difficult task for me with that in my caseload. I've always wanted to do more in regards to human trafficking and child abuse and domestic violence, and to stop it and break the cycle for families and children. Let's face it, the children are our future. My oldest daughter passed away last July, and it forced me to get motivated. Dr. Kapal reached out to me in November, and I told her, I'm not ready. I've offered to do volunteer work for several years with the domestic violence panel for the Lake County Sheriff's Department and the prosecutor's office, but I just didn't go. Didn't go. Then my own child passed away. So since December of last year, I threw my heart and soul into Safe Coalition for Human Rights and the Ashley House. And how Dr. Kapal got me there was, she said, just come check it out, just come meet the ladies. I said, okay, I can do that. I never left. We have had, right off the top of my head, since November, 14 families come through. Some have stayed overnight, some have stayed for a couple days, some have stayed for weeks, some have stayed for months, some have stayed for a multitude of months. We are in desperate need of funding to be sustainable. The families we have taken in, we took in a woman and her child. He had schizophrenia, and the mother was not taking care of the child. We connected her to all of those services. A lot of the families that come to us that have been human trafficked, with children or without, or domestic violence, they come from the streets. A lot of them have no idea there's community resources and that the community cares about them. And we need to partner, we need to collaborate, we need to come together as one for this fight, because we can't do it alone, but we can do it together. And the time is now. These kids are growing up in these environments. Women are growing up in these environments. Men are growing up in these environments. And then they have children, and they teach them, and they go with what they know, and we know it doesn't work. And we have seen that through every family that comes through Ashley's house. Something is broken, or something maybe they weren't educated about. We have families that come to us that have no idea that there are services. There's Medicaid, there's food stamps, the churches, community partners, law enforcement. They'll help you with that protective order. We do full route around services. We have applied for grants and we're denied, and we're like, why are we getting denied? We have the stats. But then we sit down at the table and we're told, these grant places aren't ready for you guys yet, because you guys do full wraparound services like transportation, hygiene needs, clothes, food, shelter, connect them to get their documents, drive them to doctor's appointments, full scope, spiritual therapy, psych evaluations if needed, connect them to SSI, cognitive behavioral therapy, trauma therapy. It's just endless, and the list continues to go. But if we don't get support from the community, if we don't all in this room partner together and come together, we are not going to be sustainable. We are all volunteers. We are all donating our own time and money to make this happen. And we refuse to give up. Refuse to give up.
Okay, we will give our attention now to Mr. Harold D'Souza from Ohio to speak on labor trafficking.
Good evening, friends. Can you hear me? Yes. Oh, sorry. I am a survivor of labor trafficking and debt bondage in the United States of America, and I just came today from Cincinnati, Ohio. This happened in 2003. I was not speaking for 10 years. I was manipulated, tricked, and trapped. And I always tell that I'm a common man, I'm a failure, and I'm a sinner. Because I failed on 4 P's. I failed as a parent, I failed as a provider, I failed as a protector, and I failed as a person. But today I want to share something very unique and important, like delegates, like Dr. Kalyani Gopal, whom I never met. I don't know from where she picked me up and identified me as a labor trafficking. And it might be like 7 or 8 years, I don't know. And she called me at Cincinnati. And that's why I want everyone to support Safe CHR. And I want to thank each one of you who's sitting here, because you all individual, including this gentleman here, that you are a pure reflection of a survivor like me, Michelle, Dawn, all the delegates who spoke here. So keep doing what you're doing. I never thought I will live. My perpetrator in Cincinnati hired a guy to shoot me. So there are a lot of things that has happened. But I want to share one episode. What happens in the life of a victim of labor trafficking or sex trafficking. My son was slapped, a full-fledged slap, when you hit a man in front of my own eyes, just to teach me a lesson. What did I do? I was quiet. I didn't do anything. That's why I say I'm a sinner. But those 4 P's got flipped. Today I have passion, I have purpose, I have power and prayer. I'm so impressed and touched by the emotions, feelings and sentiments of all the delegates who have come here today. It was just a 24 hours notice. I just want to thank Dr. Gopal. I respect her as like Mother Teresa, because Mother Teresa, I'm from India, always said, do not waste time judging people, just love them. And I want to share today one thing very from my heart, whether it is Michelle, there are so many survivors and there are so many survivors outside, is that they starve only for 3 things. Love, love, and love. They have been abused so much, every second, every minute, every day, every week, every month, every year. And I always tell that trauma has no expiration date. So once again, I want to thank each one of you. Please support Safe CHR. Funding is very important. And today I would like to share about Ashley House. I was invited to Ashley House a couple of times by Dr. Gopal with my wife. And I want to share one thing about Ashley House is that it shines like a rainbow in the sky. And why? As a survivor, I want to prove it to you which is right, is that it is cool, caring, consistent, change, creativity, compassionate and courageous. Ashley House should be in every state of the US. Number 1, why? Ashley House is the only house or shelter home in the United States of America where there is no procedures, policies or protocols. Any girl, any lady who is a victim of domestic violence, sex trafficking or any crime, she can just walk in. I have been working on human trafficking at the White House. There are so many shelter zones in the US and there are so many genuine cases of domestic violence. They do not get shelters. And at this place, at Ashley House, you just walk in. They don't ask any questions. Even if you're an immigrant, even if you don't have any status. There are so many girls here, they call me. Because I have a non-profit organization called ICE Open International. But these girls, they do not have any status. So I'm so blessed, Dr. Gopal, and your team that you have started Ashley House. And I just want to end on one note that we all need to work to start something like Ashley House for male survivors. Yeah, that's right. Today, thank you. please take all this very seriously. I know there are senators, there are prosecutors, there are a lot of people who can change the outcome for male survivors. And for labor trafficking in the United States of America, I would say 80% of the victims are foreign nationals. And out of the 80 victims, 60 are male. And today, I would say 60% of the people are not coming out and talking and sharing because they fear they will not get justice. Number one, there is no shelter home. So this thing is very important. So I just want to add out one note to look on this as a survivor of labor trafficking, to focus on victims of labor trafficking and sex trafficking both. But I'll just end on one note, that is that I want to share one thing is that survivors are poor starters, but strong finishers. Thank you, Pastor. This is just sorry. But I want to share one thing, my personal life. You know, there is a documentary coming up, To Be Free by Martin Sheen. And I think it should be released next year. And there's a biopic blockbuster film coming up on me, which is unbelievable. I think it's a blessing of CHR and God's, which will be released next year. But I want to share my personal experience. I want to tell every individual also, like, making a mistake is not a mistake. Making no mistake is a mistake. Repeating a mistake is a big mistake. But learning from my mistake and helping victims, survivors, vulnerable population, and community members globally is not a mistake. So thank you, Safe CHR. Thank you, Dr. Gopal. God bless America. God bless Safe CHR. Thank you.
We have our own Pastor Charles.
I'm Reverend Charlie Striegelmeyer, kind of retired. I met Dr. Gopal a number of years ago when I tried to recruit her to something that I was working on. Well, it tanked. But thank God she recruited me to what she was working on. And it's been one of the most worthwhile things that I've ever done in my life. You know, in the Hollywood version of human trafficking, the evil strangers throw the adorable suburban girl in the back of the white van at the mall. And when she's freed 93 minutes later, she collapses weeping into the arms of her loving parents. Does that even happen? It does occasionally. But here are some more likely stories of trafficking. A mother sells her daughter because there isn't enough money for what she needs or thinks she needs. And the younger and fresher they are, the more they command. A Prince Charming boyfriend, as we've just heard, seduces and pimps his girlfriend by love bombing her with luxuries she can't afford. And he might even traffic her right out of her parents' house while she's still in high school and nobody knows. Or a homeless runaway gets sucked into survival sex. Trafficking is the betrayal and the criminal exploitation of people who are often vulnerable and often poor. And if they are rescued, they might fight as hard as they can to go right back to their pimp. Why? Because they're trauma bonded. Nobody understands that, but it's real and they feel there's nowhere else to go. So we are fighting against all of the social diseases of cruelty and neglect that chew people up and spit them out where the traffickers can sweep them up. And we have to fight passionately for the improvement of the conditions that make people vulnerable in the first place. But as we've heard so often, there seldom seems to be enough for the people who need it most. We know a little about this at Ashley's house. Those who work with the poor and the disadvantaged are likely to be on the edge themselves. We are losing $2,500 a month, and we are covering many of the costs out of our own pockets because we believe in what we are doing. But there's another whole dimension to our work that I want to end with. We need to see the sufferings that people have already endured in their lives transformed into wisdom and compassion and strength. And we do see that in all the people we work with. Yes, survivors have been badly hurt, but what hurt them often makes them amazingly strong and wise too, if they can find a place of safety to recover. This is why I am particularly caught and held by these words of Patrick Carnes, an authority in trauma and addiction. He writes, "My experience with survivors of trauma is that every journey or recovery depends on the survivor coming to a point where all that person has gone through, means something." And the realm of meaning is the realm of spirit, which is why spiritual care is part of what we offer at Ashley's House. And when I say that, I don't want to give the impression that we have the answer here and we're trying to convert people. We will work with whatever spirituality comes in with them. We will respect the spirituality that they have and help them to move forward with it. And we are grateful for your prayers and for whatever support you see fit to accord us. Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. And we are running a little bit behind time, so we have 2 more speakers, and we promise we'll get you fed right at 6:30-ish. So do we have Representative Smith here? No? All right, so maybe we will lead on time. All right, so then if we can have Rami Maximus. Sorry. Okay.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Yes. My name is Rami. I'm a college professor at Ivy Tech Community College in Valparaiso, and I'm also a program chair for cybersecurity information assurance. I was invited today. I wasn't supposed to speak. Just found out last minute I'm speaking here today. So this is all coming just out of my mind. What I do for a living, I actually teach cybersecurity. And I speak one language that not many people speak, which is 0s and 1s. Me and my student in the computer lab, we do a lot of cybersecurity experiments. And over the years, using computers, using cybersecurity skills, I come up with a lot of interesting stories. And I was nominated by United States Department of Defense to join the cybersecurity subcommittee for the whole United States curriculum. And I started getting a lot of phone calls from state and federal agency about consulting in cybersecurity. And currently we're helping the Porter County building a high-tech computer crimes. And the reason the world changed right now because, give you like an idea what happened. In 1980s, we have about 1986, we have about 1,000 computers on the internet. Since 1986. But 10 years later, we jumped from 1,000 computers to 1 million computers connected to the internet. In 2006, we moved to 1 billion computers connected to the internet. Now, not all the computers are just computers. We call them IoT device, Internet of Things, like your microwave, your cell phone, your Alexa, and so on and so forth. In 2021, we're going to have a 10.7 billion devices connected to the internet. The reason we have a cybersecurity problem, the reason we have human trafficking, because we as a human, we take advantage of technology. It's very convenient, right? You can talk to somebody, you can see their pictures on the phone and so on and so forth. But also those criminals get really smart. Those criminals goes online and download programs. The minute your kid is communicating with her friends and she's honest and she's innocent, that person can actually locate her location just because your kids did not know how to fine-tune that application on their cell phone. They can actually pinpoint your kid's location from satellite in orbit. It's scary if I talk about cybersecurity. You're not going to be able actually to make your phone calls after now. There's a program called Signaling System 7 that I can intercept any phone calls in the United States and outside the United States. A congressman, a senator, anybody. The only way you can protect yourself is to use encrypted communication. The word encrypted meaning use scrambled communication. So those actually child predators, we call them sex predators and human trafficker, they use this program that actually scramble the communication. They get really smart nowadays. They don't use just the cell tower to communicate. They use what they call a Wi-Fi communication. So it's even difficult for law enforcement agency to intercept the location because I work with the police department also in my town, and we did a lot of different crimes and so on and so forth. It's very difficult sometimes to triangulate the signals and find out their location. So my advice to all of you, I have 3 little girls, 13, 14, and currently 18. And my daughter, when she left to Oklahoma yesterday, I have a program on her cell phone, I Trust My Daughter. The best way to protect your kids and to fight cyber crimes and child exploitation, human trafficker is really education. There's no program. You can download all these kind of apps that can say control your kids' activity on the internet and so on and so forth. It's not going to work. The best thing you can do is really educating your kids. Get involved. Send your kids first to take computer classes. We run a lot of cybersecurity boot camps on Ivy Tech. I just held Cyber Patriot for 2018, 2019. We also have a lot of cybersecurity boot camps and so on and so forth. The best way to fight those crimes is always education. I have a lot of stories to tell you here, but I don't have a lot of time. I actually have a class starting at 6 o'clock. I moved my class to be here. And it's interesting to see your reaction when I tell you that when you make a phone call, anybody can intercept that phone call by buying a computer card. It's worth about $300. You can get it from the internet. And that child trafficker right now, they have that technology. And they get trained by watching free movies on YouTube. So how are we going to protect ourselves as a cybersecurity professors and actually consultant for federal and state agency? Education. It's the only way you can protect yourself. And unfortunately, as a lot of survivors talk here today, the best way actually to fight this type of crime is education and awareness. And it goes many as involving the community. We have a lot of meetings in our towns that you go to this meeting and learn about computer safety on the internet. There's a lot of crimes. I actually was involved in a computer crime in my town. For 2 weeks, I couldn't go to sleep because I actually speak other languages. I was born overseas and so on and so forth. And learning about this technology, those child traffickers and those criminals they use, it was just amazing. And we have about 45 Ivy Tech students. We also have coalition between Valparaiso University, Purdue Northwest, Holy Cross, Calumet St. Joseph is involved in this project with Porter County, also going to be supporting other also county in this project here. The students are very excited. What we do in the classroom right now become reality. To face those crimes, we really have to work as a group, churches, colleges, university, law enforcement agency, your friends, your neighborhood, everybody have to get involved. This is it for me today. I wasn't really prepared to talk, but if you have any questions, thank you very much.
Well, hopefully the awareness has been a little bit deeper for some of you. You've been able to understand the level of exposure of human trafficking that we have here just within not only Northwest Indiana, but the United States. But when we try to protect our home, when we try to address the issues that we have here, this is where we start, and then we roll out the Ashley's House, the safe CHRs to other places in the country. Just one piece of information, if you were thinking about how big this is, 20 years ago, the biggest export out of Mexico used to be drugs. Today, up to 5 years ago, it was human beings. Think about it, there's no cultivation, there's no real inherent expense. If they die, you just find another couple. That is a big problem that we're facing here. Not something we're going to solve overnight either. But thank you very much to all the attendees, the speakers that took time to come out tonight. We appreciate the fact that you guys actually care enough about the community and what you do for a living to hopefully bring that back so we can actually get something underway. I'm going to leave you with one note. Everybody had their own little nice way of ending the way they did it. I'm going to do it this way. And if you've heard this before, bear with me. So if you think that what we're doing right here is above and beyond what we can do and the reach is too far, I'm going to tell you a story. Dr. Paul's told this, I've heard this like 9 million times, but it's a starfish story. You guys heard of this? Okay. It was a father and a daughter, and they were walking together along the beach one morning. And as they're talking and having their nice little conversation, the family comes over the crest of the hill, and they look down at the beach, and there's a bunch of glistening little things out there. And the daughter asks, "Daddy, what are those down there?" And he says, "Well, honey, those are starfish." He says, "Well," she said, "Well, what are they doing?" He says, "Well, they washed up in the high tide, and now that the water's gone back, they're just going to stay there, dry out, and they're going to die." Well, she lets go of his hand, she runs down to the beach, she starts picking them up, and she starts throwing them in, one by one. Well, being the dad, knowing that there's hundreds of them out here, there's no way. He gets up to her and he says, "Honey, what are you doing? You can't save them all, it doesn't matter." So she picks one up, she throws it in the ocean and said, "It meant that one." So if you think about what we do, even if we only reach 1 or 2 people, what we did makes a difference to somebody. Being in the juvenile system, and I'm sure Bernie and Porter County prosecutor, when you see what you go through and the effort and the expenses you go through to help people in general, I'll tell you, it means so much when somebody comes back into court at the end of the day and says, "Hey, I just wanted to say thank you to the prosecutor, to the judge. You know, if it wasn't for you, I don't know if I'd still be alive." So that's what I'm looking at from that experience and looking at a child's life. And we've seen the impact we've had on our survivors. It means something. It makes a difference to that one. So please just take a little bit of interest, try and get some momentum going, and let's help us finish what we came here to start to do, okay? So I do have bad news. Hold on. I said we're going to eat now. Dr. Paul said not yet. So we're right on time. So what we can do, we're going to have a video play, and then we're going to have a short award ceremony for some children, and then we can eat. So I apologize, but thank you all once again. Oh, and if you haven't picked up your t-shirt, please go and see Dr. Sinha in the front, and he'll take care of you.
Kids come first, right, before us. So we want to celebrate the children who took part in the pandemic, the youth pandemic experience competition that we held. We would like to thank our sponsors, the Legacy Foundation, the Kiwani's Breakfast Club of Northwest Indiana, the Augustana Church, the Augustana Lutheran Church, and Mid-America Psychological and Counseling Services, and individual donors who helped us host this conference, especially Dr. Lang, who I'm missing. Where are you? Oh, there she is. And especially Dr. Lang, who helped get the videos together for these children. And before we do that, I'd like you to see a short video of one of our survivors, Amanda Blackwood, which Dr. Thorla will play for you for a moment.